seniors 55 years of age and older do not see any decrease, no change to their fully funded Medicare benefits. I want to make sure, and I want to repeat that those seniors 55 years of age and older see no change to their fully funded Medicare benefits. So what happens to those that are 54 years of age and younger? Those that are 54 years of age and younger will have the same choices of certified health care coverage that, say, a member of Congress does, at costs that are equal to, at a minimum, what Medicare would be paying. Now, you're going to hear some people say that that's a voucher program, but it's not a voucher program. It's called premium support. Much like what Medicare Advantage and Medicare Part D do today. And here's why it's called premium support. Because it's not just one price, one size fits all. You see, under our plan, the poor and the high risk get more support. And the wealthy, who can afford to pay more for their health care, get less support. It's graduated. But the truth is, if we do nothing, which is what President Obama and Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi and their allies are advocating for and have passed in the health care law, if we do nothing, Medicare will not be surviving past the year 2024. You heard them say, I've got 4 children and I'm a grandfather of 5. I want to make sure that my children and their children have access to these safety net programs just like all Americans do. And those are the programs that I'm fighting for and supporting. Now, because we're here to talk about health care, I'm going to limit my introductory remarks there. And I'm going to open it up to questions for you. Because this is such an opportunity for me. Nobody in Washington holds the corner market on all the good ideas. The good ideas come from folks like you. And I want to hear from you, and I want to hear your questions, and I want to hear what's on your mind so that I can take that information back. If I can't answer your question, we'll take it down, we'll get your contact information, and we'll get back to you. So who wants to ask the first question? I saw your piece of paper in your hand. I knew you were going to do that. How are you doing? Good to see you. Sit down, don't you? You don't have to stand up. Okay.
First of all, thank you for coming. The hospice, I've been in the hospice, I've been volunteer for 3 years, and I told Steve, you know, anywhere you go to speak, I always bring the same subject. That's about the mill. And it was devastating with this letter yesterday. 4,500 of us got health care, medical, prescription drugs, and life cease the 31st. I know that you just talked about, and I don't want to take up this subject because you're talking about, I'm on Medicare too, right now, but I have to seek out.
You're over 55?
Don't worry. Yeah, but I heard that don't worry a lot of times. Guaranteed, I took that on my vocabulary in 1985, the first bankruptcy. This is the third one. And that company, the reason I came to the, as I tell all my friends, I want to ask this question, if you could find out how they sold it. $1 billion company for $20 million. And I know you're on top of it because the last time I talked to you about the mill, I mean, I would say you know all the answers, but they could have built that mill. Even our union or somebody else could sell that as scrap and put that money in a diesel can, which we have for the younger guys that retired before 2003. I paid for our health care.
Let me.
I'm asking, is there a federal investigation of how can you sell something worth $1 billion with our tax money? Because if you remember, you've probably been involved, our commissioner signed an agreement with Wheeling Pitt when it was Wheeling Pitt. for $175 million of taxpayer money to build that EAF, the electric arc furnace. They were supposed to pay back the Mingo and the surrounding communities money as they progressed. That was 2001. What happened to that money? And when this bankruptcy occurred, why didn't the judge take that into consideration, paying us first, instead of these guys that are going to make a ton of money? Like I said, they liquidate. I don't know. There might be something beyond my concept.
Well, let me help these folks understand everything that we're talking about. Do you folks know what he's talking about?
Mm-hmm.
The steel mill.
I think most of
The steel mill.
Right.
RG Steel.
Mm-hmm.
Parts of it, and I want to make sure I get this right, parts of it, RG Steel filed bankruptcy. Parts of the Mingo Junction facility went up for auction. It was my understanding that there were multiple competitors for the property. Some of the property they were hoping would be sold to a company that would, or that a company that could start those properties back up and retain the jobs would purchase the property. The property that he's talking about was being looked at, and I quite honestly do not know if that's all final. Let me get through and tell you what all we did, and then we may have to take your question and do some more digging. Was being looked at to be bought by a scrap company, a salvage company. And I don't have the exact cost of the building, but what was the original, a $2 billion facility? Is that what it was?
They said 20 million.
A $20 million
facility.
facility.
Worth with the EAF, the roll changer, the caster, all the things we put in are all new, and that place is ready to go. I told you that.
Yeah.
We could fill that void from Japan.
Sure.
But something is a cog somewhere.
Well, where the cog is policies coming out of Washington that are putting a stranglehold on businesses, and businesses cannot let go of their investment dollars because of the uncertainty surrounding our economic conditions. They don't know. Businesses just simply do not know what's coming around the corner next. There has been an attack on the steel industry just like there's been an attack on the coal industry. And it's coming from all sides. You've got to have, and you and I have talked about this, you've got to have manganese ferroalloy in order to make steel. I'm fighting an EPA rulemaking process right now that will shut down the last 2 manganese ferroalloy producing facilities in America. Now, manganese is to steel manufacturing, and I know the ladies in this room will understand this, it's to steel manufacturing what flour is to making biscuits. My mom will tell you, you don't make homemade biscuits without flour. Well, you don't make steel without manganese ferroalloy. And if we can't get it here in America, guess where we've got to buy it from? We've got to buy it from China, Korea, other places overseas, some of which might not even like us very much. And if we can't manufacture steel in America, where does that put us in terms of our national security? You've got to have steel to make ships and airplanes and tanks and vehicles and weapon systems and bullets and guns and all those kinds of things. You've got to have that stuff. And yet, the administration is attacking that industry. Even if we have robust steel manufacturing here in America, let's assume for a second that we could crank back up that plant. And I hope someday we do. But let's assume for a second that we could. Where's the energy going to come from? There's an attack on the coal industry that is providing 87% of Ohio's energy today and 45% of America's energy today. It's the most reliable, cost-affordable energy in America. And without it, how are we going to refuel or fuel a resurgence in American manufacturing? It's going to be extremely difficult. But the facility that he's talking about has been auctioned off to a company that has bought it for scrap. And if a buyer is not found to start that facility up, it's going to be torn down and it's going to be sold for scrap. And once it's torn down, it's not likely, or it will be a lot more unlikely, that anybody could come in and start that steel mill back up. And that's a shame. That's a tragedy, because we've got a workforce of steel workers here that are qualified and ready to go to work. And we need steel in America. We need lots of steel to support the expansion of domestic energy production around oil and natural gas, and what's happening with the Marcellus and the Utica shale. We need steel manufacturing. When I found out what was happening with that facility and that it was going through that bankruptcy process, I called the judge in New York, or in Maryland. I'm sorry, the judge was in Maryland. And I spoke with him over the telephone, and I followed it up with a letter. And I asked him, at a minimum, please put some time in there so that the business community can shop around, because this happened so quickly. RG Steel went bankrupt, and then the next thing we knew, it was being auctioned off. The local business community wants an opportunity to be able to shop that facility around and try to entice buyers and other companies that might be willing to come in and start that steel mill back up. I did not get a response from the judge. The only thing the judge told me verbally over the telephone, he said, "Congressman, I understand your concerns." He said, "But," he said, "my role is not to determine the merit of the purchase in the auction. My role is to make sure that the law is being followed. If RG Steel is willing to accept $20 million for ever how much that facility is really worth," he said, "my job is to protect the creditors and to do what the company wants to get out of this mess." It's a private sector issue. It's not one that I can go twist somebody's arm and say, you can't sell that facility. It belongs to a private company. You wouldn't want me to be able to do that.